Most people ignore the simplest rule about money, and that is exactly why they stay broke. It is not about how much you earn. It is about what you do the moment money enters your life. If your first instinct is always to spend, your future never gets a chance to grow. Wealth is not built from what remains. It is built from what you protect first. The problem is not obvious because nothing breaks immediately. You earn, you spend, you continue. It feels normal, but normal is exactly what keeps you stuck. Small decisions, repeated every day, slowly shape your entire financial life. And when those decisions are automatic, you never question where they are leading you. You were never taught to pause. Money comes in, and your mind instantly moves to using it. Bills, wants, habits. Everything feels urgent, but urgency is often an illusion. It pushes you to act without thinking. And when you act without thinking, you repeat the same pattern without realizing it. This pattern is not about lack of discipline. It is about lack of awareness. You cannot change what you do not see, and most people never see this moment clearly. The moment where they could decide differently, but instead follow what feels natural. That moment decides everything. Not your salary, not your job, not your background. Just a small decision repeated hundreds of times. Because over time, repetition becomes direction, and direction becomes outcome. Once you understand this, you stop looking for complex solutions. You stop searching for shortcuts. You realize the answer has been in your behavior all along. And changing behavior is where real progress begins. The first step is simple, but uncomfortable. You must pause the moment money arrives. Do nothing for a second. No spending, no planning purchases, just awareness. This pause breaks the automatic reaction. It gives you control. And without this control, every other financial strategy will fail before it even starts. In that pause, you begin to see your choices clearly. You realize that money is not something you must use immediately. It is something you can direct. This shift feels small, but it changes the entire structure of your decisions. Now you introduce a rule. Every time money comes in, a portion is removed before anything else happens. Not after spending, not if something is left first. This is how you reverse the pattern that kept you stuck for years. At first, this feels restrictive. It feels like you are taking something away from yourself. But in reality, you are giving something to your future. You are building a foundation that did not exist before. Most people fail here because they expect instant results. They look for visible change too quickly. But this process works quietly at the beginning. It builds slowly, almost invisibly, until it reaches a point where growth becomes clear. Consistency is what matters. Not the size of the amount, but the repetition. The same action, again and again, without interruption. This is how habits are replaced and results begin to compound. As you repeat this process, something begins to change. Your mindset shifts from reacting to directing. Money no longer disappears without thought. It follows a path you created. And because of that, your financial life becomes more controlled than less chaotic. You also notice that your spending becomes more intentional. You stop buying out of impulse and start choosing based on value. This is not about restriction. It is about clarity. You begin to see what actually matters and what does not. At this stage, the habit becomes easier. What once felt difficult starts to feel normal. And this is where real change happens. Because when a new behavior becomes normal, it no longer requires constant effort to maintain. Now you move beyond saving. You start thinking about growth, because money that sits still is only protected, not expanded. To build wealth, you must allow your money to work, not just exist. Investing becomes the next step, not as a risk, but as a process, a way to turn your saved money into something that can grow over time. This is where effort begins to multiply instead of staying fixed. Most people hesitate here. They fear losing money, but the real loss comes from doing nothing, because money that does not grow slowly loses value, even if it feels safe. Once you accept this, your thinking changes again. You stop seeing investing as optional. It becomes necessary, because without growth, your money slowly loses power over time. Inflation, rising costs, and changing markets all work against money that stands still. And while nothing dramatic happens at first, the long-term impact becomes impossible to ignore. This is where consistency matters more than timing. You do not need to catch perfect moments. You need to keep moving forward. Small, regular investments build momentum, and that momentum, over time, creates results that feel much larger than the individual steps that created them. You begin to understand that wealth is not built from big actions, but from repeated ones. The same decision, again and again, without interruption. That is what creates stability. And stability is what allows growth to continue without being reset every time conditions change. Most people break this pattern because they get distracted. They chase quick results, react to no's, or compare themselves to others. And every time they change direction, they lose the progress they already made. Consistency disappears, and with it, long-term growth. This is why discipline must become automatic. Not forced, not temporary, but built into your system. When your actions no longer depend on how you feel, your results stop fluctuating. They become steady, predictable, and much stronger over time. At this point, your financial life becomes structured. Money comes in, a portion is protected, and that portion is directed toward growth. Nothing is random. Every step has a purpose. And over time, that structure starts producing results without constant attention. As your system runs, something changes inside you. You stop relying on motivation. You no longer need to convince yourself to make the right decision. The decision is already made. This removes friction. And when there is no friction, consistency becomes natural instead of forced. You also begin to see time differently. Instead of focusing on quick results, you focus on long-term outcomes. You understand that real growth takes time, but time rewards those who stay consistent. This shift removes impatience and replaces it with confidence. At this stage, your money starts working independently from your effort. Even small returns begin to build on each other. It may not look impressive at first, but it is real. And over time, that reality becomes stronger than any temporary gain from spending. This is where compounding begins to show its power. Not suddenly, but steadily. Growth starts building on previous growth. And what once felt slow begins to accelerate, but only because you stayed consistent long enough to reach this point. Most people never experience this because they stop too early. They expect results before the system has time to work. And when they do not see immediate change, they return to old habits. This resets everything and keeps them stuck in the same cycle. You are different now. You understand that progress is not always visible at the start, but you trust the process, and that trust allows you to continue when others stop, which is exactly what creates the gap between you and everyone else. As time passes, the results begin to appear. Not dramatically at first, but clearly enough to notice. Your investments grow. Your financial position becomes more stable. And for the first time, you feel that your money is doing something beyond just covering expenses. This is where your identity starts to change. You no longer see yourself as someone who struggles with money. You begin to see yourself as someone who builds it. And this shift in identity influences every decision you make moving forward. You stop measuring success by how much you spend or earn in the moment. You start measuring it by how much you are building over time. This removes the need for constant consumption and replaces it with long-term thinking. At this point, opportunities begin to look different. You are no longer focused on what you can afford. You are focused on what can grow. And this perspective opens paths that were always there, but invisible to your old mindset. Your environment may not understand this change. Others may continue spending, reacting, and repeating the same patterns. And their behavior may pressure you to return to old habits. This is where many people fall back, but if you stay consistent, the difference becomes clear over time. Your path starts to separate from theirs. Not because you are doing something extreme, but because you are doing something consistent. And consistency always wins in the long run. At this stage, your progress becomes visible not only to you, but to others. The difference is no longer hidden. While many are still struggling with the same cycle, you are moving forward with control. Your money is growing, your decisions are clear, and your direction is stable. This is where consistency begins to pay off in a way that cannot be ignored. You also notice a new kind of freedom. Not complete independence yet, but a sense of space. You are no longer trapped by every expense or unexpected situation. You have options, and having options is the first real sign that your financial life is changing in a meaningful way. Opportunities now come with less pressure. You are able to think, evaluate, and decide without urgency. This leads to better decisions, and better decisions create better outcomes. Over time, this difference compounds just like your investments. Momentum becomes your advantage. Each step forward supports the next one. Each gain builds on the previous one. And what once required effort now feels natural. You are no longer forcing progress. You are continuing it. Then you realize something important. There was never a hidden secret, no complex formula, Just one habit that most people ignore. And that habit quietly controls everything. Once you change it, everything else started changing with it. You were never stuck because of your income. You were stuck because of your behavior. And once your behavior changed, your results followed. Not instantly, but inevitably. Most people will never reach this point because they keep looking for something more complicated. They search for strategies, tricks, shortcuts, but they ignore the simple behavior that controls everything. And because they ignore it, they stay in the same place no matter how much they try to improve. You did something different. You focused on the foundation. You changed the moment that matters most. The moment money enters your life. And that decision, repeated consistently, created a completely different path. From here, your future becomes predictable. Not because you know everything, but because your system works. You are no longer relying on luck or sudden changes. You are building something that grows over time, step by step, without interruption. There will still be challenges. There will still be moments where progress feels slow. But those moments do not stop you anymore, because you understand the process, and understanding removes doubt. Looking back, the change seems small, just a simple shift in behavior. But that small shift created a completely different outcome. A path where money builds instead of disappears. This is the truth most people ignore. You do not stay broke because of what you lack. You stay broke because of what you repeat. Change the habit, and you change everything.